Hello, hello. All right, guys. So this is, of course, we've already done composite figures, so hopefully you're understanding those. And now what we're going to be doing is getting ready for the quiz. Okay. Notice that you're going to have a review, then you're going to do quiz 9A the day after. You're going to do quiz 9B the day after that. Okay. Good. Well, so you know how this goes when we do reviews. You're going to do these three problems. Okay, I'm going to submit the answer. You just got to remember how to tell the difference between area and circumference. Do these three problems, come up with the right answers. You know it, then you move on. Then, when you get done to the end, you fast forward to the parts you didn't understand and you fix those. That's what you're going to do with this. So, this should go pretty quick for those of you that understand it. And you're going to just do these problems, see if you understand them. If you don't understand them, you're going to watch the video. If you still don't understand them, you're going to ask questions. Okay, good luck with this. Okay, so look at these, hit pause, do these, and go from there. Good luck. Okay, there you go. So you should have figured your area. Remember, your area measures the amount of space it takes up on the inside. Okay, so that's what we're measuring. You use the formula that the area equals pi times radius squared, pi times r. You should have come up with that you had the area is 153.86 feet squared. Don't forget that part. Okay. Your circumference should have come out to be 43.96 feet. That's going to be feet to the first power, because remember that circumference measures the perimeter of the circle. Okay. So that's our perimeter. It's linear. It's one dimensional. Okay. So your second circle should have come out that your area was 50.24 feet squared. And your circumference should come out to 25.12 feet. Okay. Remember that's 12/100ths. Okay. And this last one, we've talked about how to do this. You're still going to use the same formula as circumference, because that's what they tell you you've got is a circumference. They tell you that the circumference is 75.36 inches. What you have to solve for is the radius. And the radius comes out to be 12 inches. Okay, so again, if you got these answers, you know what you're doing. Move to the next section, you're good. If you don't, go ahead and write down, see if you can figure out where your mistakes were. If you can figure out your mistakes, then you got it. Make some notes. Make sure you do well on that. You remind yourself that on the quiz, all right? If you couldn't remember the formulas, then you better make sure you got those on flashcards. Okay, so now you got to find the area of each one of these shapes. Calculate the area, see if you do it right. If you get the right answer, you're good. If you don't, well, you're going to have to come back and review it. But right now, you should be able to do this. These two should be fairly simple. Good luck. Okay, so on this one, we should have gotten the patio area, which is this area in orange. Okay, so if it's that area in orange, it comes out to be 16 yards squared. right? And the patio area, which is this area with the stripes in it, okay, so the garden area comes out to be 20 yards squared. Okay. And you showed your math to figure out how to do this, right? You didn't just come up with an answer. You had to show your work, you had to justify your answer. Okay. But it's pretty simple. There's no, I mean, you're using the equations for area of a rectangle. So again, if you don't know how you got with it, you look at it now. And if you can understand how you got it and you can actually show your work with it, you're done. If you don't know what you did, then, well, you're going to fast forward to the end of the video where we talk about this, and then you're going to figure out how you do it, because this is, after all, a review video. Okay, now do these two. Now remember, we called this second one, example 7, a concentric circle. All right, so go ahead and do these two, and let's see how you do with that. And then, hey, once we're done with this, if you understand it, again, you don't have anything else to do. If you don't understand it, then you're just going to fast forward to the parts you don't understand. I bet there's half of this you get and you don't need help with. The other half you do. So good luck. Let's see how you do. All right. There you go. So there's a hint in there at least, right? And so you should have come out with this. Example 6 should have come out with a area, right? The total area of 10,426.5 meters squared. And this concentric circle in example 7 should have come out with a total area of 643.7 inches squared. All right. All right. So, well, now if you got all of these right, you're done. You know what you're doing. You're going to do fine on 9A and 9B. 9A is primarily going to be this right here. If you can do these, you got 9A. 9B is going to be these here. You're going to have to do these composite figures and these composite figures. If you can do these, you're good. Okay? There's a method to it. Now, at this point, it's been an 8-minute video. You probably spent 20 minutes on this doing these problems. Now you know if you know what you're doing. If you don't, that's why it's worth the time to invest right now in going through and go through your notes. Look through your notes first. If you can see in your notes what you did and how to do this, then go back in that. That's better for your brain. But if you can't do that, then go back and review the notes that I give you as I explain how to do these. Okay? All right. So you know what you got to do. So hopefully you choose well. Okay, so now I'm going to start explaining these others. So if you're done, you're done. Fast forward till you hit to the part you need to help with. Okay, good luck. All right, here we go. So with this first one, really, I mean, you're just going to take the area, right? So we're looking for the area. So you're going to say the area equals pi times the radius times the radius. We know the radius is 7. Remember, the diameter is the full measure across, right? The radius is from the center out. So you got to make sure you understand that terminology. Then you're just going to plug it in. So you're going to have 3.14 times 7 feet times 7 feet. So you're going to have feet squared. And you take 3.14 times 7, which gives you 153.86 feet squared. And you could kind of guess that because 7 times 7 is 49, and that's almost 50. 3.14 is more than 3, and 3 times 50 would be 150, so it should be around 150 feet squared. Make sure you're giving me that feet squared, right? Okay, that's an important part. And then again, like we said, if you know that you're radius is 7, then your diameter must be 14. Okay, so we're just going to take the diameter times pi. So we're going to take 14 times the 3.14, which gives us 43.96 feet. Remember, we're talking about linear, because it's when you unroll it, it's just that's all it is. It's a linear strip, right? Okay, same thing for the next circle. Again, it's just the same formula. Thing you have to remember is the radius, again, is only half of the diameter. So it's this part right here, right? So that's 4 feet. Okay, so we're going to have pi times 4 times 4, which means we're going to have 3.14 times 16. Well, 3 times 16 is 48. It's going to be a little more than that, so it's going to be 50.24 feet squared. Remember, we're talking feet times feet, so it's feet squared. Okay, and the circumference, again, it's the diameter times pi, which the diameter is 8, right? Because all the way across is the diameter, right? So that's the diameter. So it's 8 times 3.14, and we're talking about feet. So it's going to be 25.12 feet, not feet squared. Be careful. You have to be careful. Okay? All right, so those two should be fairly well reviewed. You have to know the difference between the area and the circumference. You got to know that. If you don't, you got to start working on that. Okay? And then this one is fairly simple, but you're going to have to show me how you solved it, right? Because there's a couple ways to do this. You can do it with the equation, and because what we're trying to find is the radius, right? You're trying to find the radius. What is the radius of the mirror? You draw a picture of it. Here's the mirror, right? And it has a circumference. So the measure around the perimeter is 75.36 inches. Okay, so you can do a couple things. We've talked in class about how you can look at this and solve for the radius. You could solve for the diameter if you wanted, and then divide it by 2. Because if you remember, your diameter is across, your radius is going to be half of that, right? Your radius is half of the diameter. So you could solve for the diameter, but so let's set this up. So we know the circumference is 75.36. The circumference also equals the diameter times pi. So we can say that 75.36 equals the diameter times pi, which is 3.14, right? So if we're solving for the diameter, and we know that we're just going to divide that in 2 to find the radius, then we could just divide both sides by 3.14, which means our diameter equals 24 inches. So if our diameter is 24 inches, then our radius must be 12 inches, right? So that means the radius equals 12 inches. Because we're going to divide that by 2. 24 divided by 2. Okay, so if you're interested, if that makes sense and you got that, then go ahead, move on. But I'm going to show you another way, because it's a little more difficult, but not much more difficult. Okay, so we're going to set it up different, but we're still going to use the same understanding, right? But we're going to go back to this formula. So we're going to have that 75.36 equals 2 times the radius times pi. Now, I'm going to simplify some things here. So I'm going to have 75.36 equals 2 times 3.14 times the radius. Okay, I'm going to simplify this again. 2 times 3.14 is 6.28, which of course means now I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by 6.28. And I get that the radius equals 12 inches. Okay, R equals 12 inches. I got to remember I'm talking about inches. They told me inches. And I'm just finding the measure of the radius. So that's how you do that. I don't care which way you choose. They're both good ways, and they both communicate. You understand. You set up the formula, you substituted the values, you solved. Works for me. Heck, the other way you could do it is just go ahead and solve it from the formula point of view and say that circumference equals diameter times pi, and that I'm going to divide both sides by the pi, and then I'm going to have the diameter equals the circumference divided by pi. Hey, that's a formula. If you got that one memorized, you could just write that down. But that's the advantage of having watched the video. So good luck with that. So I hope you understood it. If you don't, come ask me in class. I'll be glad to show you, but think about it a little bit. All right, let's look at these two. Okay, again, what we're doing is we're going to add two shapes, right? So let's shade those in. Okay, so now I look at this. What I have to remember is that this rectangle, this piece right here, is a part of the rectangle, but it's also the same as this side because it's a square. So, and because it's a rectangle, then that means opposite sides are congruent, which means if this side is 3 meters, this side's 3 meters, 5 plus 3 plus 5 is 13. So this whole thing is 13 meters. So I'm going to call this rectangle number 1, and I'm going to call this rectangle number 2. So I'm going to take area of number 1 plus the area of number 2 is going to equal the total area. Okay, so now I'm going to look at this and say, well, that's a 13 by 3, right? So the area for number 1 would be 13 by 3, and the area of number 2 is a 3 by 3, right? So that's going to be 3 meters by 3 meters. So 3 meters times 3 meters. So this gives me 39 meters squared, and this next one gives me 9 meters squared. 39 plus 9 is 48 meters squared. That's my total. That's what your work would look like. So if you're wondering how would I do this, I mean, this is the verbal model that we've spoken of. You're going to set up a verbal model so you know how to set it up, and then you're going to complete it by using the formulas that the area is length times width. Okay. Okay, so the patio area on this one should be fairly simple because really all we're talking about is this area right here. So it's a 4 by 4 square, and the area of a rectangle, right, is length times width, which is we have 4 yards by 4 yards, which is 16 yards squared. Okay, and now if we look at the other one though, that's a little more difficult because what we did was we're going to take, you could do it one of two ways, at least two ways. I could think of 3 ways right now how you could do this. So you could have said, I'm going to break this into 2 rectangles, right? And said, well, this one's going to be, I'm going to have this rectangle here, which I have to figure out the dimensions, and this rectangle here. Okay. Or you could have said, I'm going to take the big rectangle minus the small rectangle, because you've already done some of the work, because you figured out what the patio was. That's how I did it. I took the whole rectangle, right, which is actually a square, and then I subtracted the patio from it. Because that's what's happened, right? We've just taken the patio out and we want to know what the rest of it is. So if I know the whole thing, it's the length, and again, area of a rectangle is length times width. So I'm going to take the area of the big minus the area of the patio. The big one is just 6 by 6, right? So that's going to be 6 times 6, 6 yards by 6 yards minus, I already said that was 16 yards. Which is going to be 36 yards squared minus 16 yards squared, right? Which gives me 20 yards squared. So the garden area is 20 yards squared. You might have also looked and said, well, this is 4, right? This is 4 by 2, so that's going to be 8 yards squared. And this is a 6 by 2, that's going to be 12 yards squared. 8 plus 12 is... But again, you're showing your math, right? Ideally, you're showing me the verbal model of what you're going to do. You're showing me your math, right? You're giving me the... Ideally, you probably even would have showed me that this was length times width and length times width. And then you're coming up with your solution. You're showing your work, right? You're justifying your answer. Okay. Again, you're fast forwarding to the problems you don't understand. And I'm assuming that most of you are going to get most of this. So the key to all this is to understand your formulas, right? To understand that when we look at this shape here, and what are we talking about? What are we putting together? What are we taking apart? So if I look at this, I have a rectangle with 2 semicircles, right? And we've talked about that 2 semicircles make a full circle, right? Because a semicircle is half a circle. So 2 times a half circle, that gives you 2 over 2, which is 1 circle. Okay, that's going to be an important one to remember. Okay, all right. So now what I just did was say that what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the area of a rectangle plus the area of the circle. So I got to remember my formulas, right? My area of the rectangle is length times width. My area of the circle is pi r squared. Okay, so I have to remember that if my diameter, remember that's the diameter, which is 70 meters, then the radius is half of that, right? Because it only goes from the middle out. So that's going to be 30. My radius equals 35 meters. Okay. I also have to look at my rectangle and realize that that goes from here to here, which is 70 meters, and from here to here, which is 94 meters. So I'm going to do that math, which means I'm going to have 94 meters times 70 meters, which is going to give me meters squared, right? And 74 times, or 70 times 94 is 6580. So 6,580 meters squared plus 3.14 times 35 times 35 is going to give me meters squared. That's 3,846.5 meters squared. Now when I add those together, I get 10,426.5 meters squared. You have to remember that meters squared part, right? That's important because put down meters. Later on, it's really easy to say, oh, I meant to put down meters squared, but you and I don't know, and if you didn't type it in, you must not have known. Okay, so that's going to be one of those ones where you say, oh, Mr. Bernot, but I knew what I was doing. And I'm going to say, well, that's good. Next time you'll be more careful when you do the rework and when you retake the quiz. Okay. Okay, so again, all we're doing is look at what I did. You set it up, right? You set up your verbal model. You wrote out your formulas. You plugged in your numbers. You simplified and then came out with your total area. Okay. Now with the concentric circle, what we talked about was you would take the area of the big circle minus the area of the hole, right? That's this part here. That's the part you cut out, right? And so if I'm looking, I have 18 times 18 times pi is the small part, right? And the big part is 23 times 20. So I'm going to take the area of the big minus the area of the small, and that's going to give me the area of my shape. Because that's what I'm doing is I'm cutting a hole out. That orange part is the piece you cut out, right? And my formula for the area of a circle is pi r squared. So we're just using that over and over again. So I plug it in. There's my formula. Remember that pi is 3.14. Now, some of you might be seeing a shortcut here because you're noticing a common factor, which is really good. It would be really good to notice that, right? Okay. So, and then we have the big area is the radius for the big circle is 23 inches, right? And the area for the small one is 18 inches. Right. Okay. So now we simplify. Okay. So again, hopefully you're seeing some patterns here because that means your brain's starting to pick up on some things you're really going to want to use next year. Okay. So we have 3.14 times 529 inches squared. And we have 3.14 times 324 inches squared. So now we're just going to simplify those. And that means we have 1,661.06 inches squared minus 1,017.36 inches squared. I've noticed a couple things here that help me predict my answer. And I wind up with 643.7 inches squared is my area of the shaded area. Okay, so again, what I did was I took the area of the big piece minus the area of the hole, the piece that we're cutting out, right? And that's how you do a concentric circle. So hopefully you're getting the gist of this. You're seeing this, or you're asking questions. You're going over your notes. You're figuring this out because if you can do these, man, you got it made on this quiz, guys. So hopefully you learned some things. You got some questions you're going to come to class with, and you're really talking about when you're doing these shapes. You're just adding and subtracting pieces. You're breaking it up the way that works best for you. There's a lot of different ways to do it. You could have even taken this one here and figured out each semicircle, multiplied that times 2. It's a little more work than what I would have done, but you could have done it that way and come out with the right thing. Okay. All right. So hopefully you're seeing some mistakes you might have made. You're looking at what you did, how you did it different, but you came out with the same answer. Make sure you're showing me your work. Notice we have a pattern here. We look at the shape. We're either adding or subtracting. And we're looking and saying we're going to give ourselves a verbal model. We're going to use our formulas. We're going to plug it in. We're going to simplify. And we're going to give ourselves an answer. We're going to make sure we're using the right units. That if we're talking about area, it's squared units. If we're talking about circumference or perimeter, we're talking about linear units. That's where you got to be careful. Good luck. Okay, so hey, come with questions, enjoy the class, and hope you learned something with this. Have a good day.